Hi, this is James, and today I want to talk about what, in my opinion, is the most underrated part of Apple Music, and this is their radio program. Now, if you don't know what it is, it's a 24/7 stream and multiple channels. Some of it's just a playlist basically that's shuffled, like if it's like a super genre specific, but they also have like artist shows that function more like traditional radio, as well as like just kind of music journalists that have these shows too. And it's really spearheaded by Zane Lowe. And if you don't know Zane Lowe, he actually came from MTV and then to BBC and then now to Apple Music. And the thing that he does on these programs and the tone that he has set that all these artists kind of go with that are a part of this is a very music heavy discussion, interview, and really just show in general. They don't focus on the cultural part as much as a lot of other radio shows about music or just programs in general do, interviews. And it's something that is really unique and is kind of against everything that makes sense when being told how to market, how to interview in the modern day. Because now what you're told is how much of the artist's brand can you get out of them, right? How much can you focus on getting that nugget of personal info that they don't really need to share but is interesting to the superfan, right? What's something about their personal life you can get out of this interview? And it seems to be the antithesis of how Zane Lowe operates. Now, you can criticize Zane Lowe for being inauthentic, and I'll get into that later, but he treats every artist like he is their biggest fan to have ever lived. It is remarkable how big of a fan he acts to all these artists. It's kind of weird and uncanny when you listen to multiple in a row, especially because you hear just how, you would think that each artist is his favorite artist ever when he talks to them. But that really is a great way to get the artist comfortable. And when he only talks about music, you get a level of opening up that you don't normally get. And he's not rude when he interviews because he takes a great effort to make sure that he's not going way too personal or asking something that's way off topic or just in general something that the artist doesn't want to talk about. Like, for example, I was listening to his Amine interview after this new Amine album just dropped, and he asked him a question about a specific lyric on a verse of one of the first songs from the project. I forget which song it was, but it's a very specific line that references an area, and it just kind of mentions something happening on this street. I forget where it is, but it's clearly something very personal. And when he asks this, he's not expecting a response almost, because Amine immediately goes like, "Oh, like that's really personal." He goes, "I understand. We don't have to talk about it." But it's something that you don't really see with a lot of interviews. And I don't know if it's this post Howard Stern era of interviewing where everything is meant to be as deep and as, gross as possible. But it feels so contrary to all the trends of modern interviewing. And one of the things that I love about this whole system is because it sets that standard also for the artists who are involved. And the artist radio shows, I think, are extremely underrated, because if you're a fan of any artist that has a radio show, you learn a lot more about what they're influenced by and what they like through these shows, because it's just them talking about what they like. And there's a great example of this with Vince Staples had a show, and that was basically just like a talk show soundtracked by the songs he chose, which were usually, Southern California or Bay Area, whatever, songs from California where Vince is from. And it was really kind of setting a lot of imagery for these stories that he and his co-host would tell and things that they would talk about. And it was really unique, and it's not something that's really traditionally done in that medium. It's something that's really kind of interesting, and you can only get there. And I will say, these radio shows, when they play popular music, which they do because they're a radio show, it's to a higher standard than just generic pop radio, because they don't have the same prerequisites that traditional radio has to follow, and things relating to charts and label pressure. Now, I will say label pressure, I do think, still very much exists with this, but in a very different way than it does for radio, because I think label pressure for radio is we have this song and we want you to play it. And now, while payola and certain things are illegal, it's very much understood that certain songs get pushed on radio. Whereas Apple Music Radio, it feels more like labels are like, please play our artists, but you can choose which songs and you can choose which artists. So what that leads to is you get a lot of small artists from big labels getting played a lot on these radio shows. What that allows for is for you to never really be surprised by industry plans, because you see them come up as a small artist on a big label. So when they become big and everyone goes, oh, well, they're an industry plant. Like Doechii is a fantastic example. It's like, I've been listening to Doechii for years and I'm not a big Doechii fan, but she would be on these radio stations and stuff like that. So I would end up hearing Doechii a lot because she was signed to TDE, who's legitimately a big label at this point, and they could push them on. And I don't know if they had any hand in it, but you know that they were definitely being promoted to Apple Music at the very least. So I have heard Doechii for a while, and that's something that allows me to be like, well, she's not an industry plant. And there's other artists that this applies to as well. The main point of this is just that you get exposed to a lot of these smaller artists that will become big later. Now, I want to talk about some of the problems with this, because I don't want to act like everything about this medium is perfect. There's a lot of questions how genuine this is. There's multiple artist shows that I'll listen to and I'm like, there is zero effort being put in. This is clearly a corporate playlist that they're just pushing, that they had no hand in making. This feels very fake. And that's something you're just not going to avoid really with a lot of these shows. There's going to be days or weeks where a program just feels off, and it's because the person hosting it, maybe their heart's not in it at that point in time, but they feel like they have to make it. And there's definitely a big label bias. It's pretty big. Like, you will notice when listening, there's not a lot of independent artists, but what it does mean is certain artists are assigned to labels that aren't as big. Like Dive, I started listening to from seeing them open for Depeche Mode, but also hearing them all the time and listening to interviews of them on Apple Music Radio, which is just not something I would normally do, but it's caused me to be a fan of this band. I think the pros outweigh, and I'm going to give a very specific example of Mike D's radio show, Mike D from the Beastie Boys, where he plays a lot of funk, Motown, all of that kind of 50s sound that really shows his love for that type of music. Because if you've listened to like later Beastie Boys, or really like Check Your Head, or like some of that time frame of the Beastie Boys where they're making their own music, they're playing as a band, their music is so influenced by some of the funk greats from that time, and you don't really know how much of that is like unfair appropriation, how much of that is done in respect, until you listen to a radio show like that, and you can confidently say, oh, he truly loves this music. This music is made out of love for the art. It's done out of respect for it. It's done out of wanting to continue it. And that's something that this radio show allows it to do. A genre that's not really prevalent among people in general today is able to be pushed in a way that it's not in any other medium right now. And that's something I have so much respect for and so much love for in music, because I think there's definitely a space that needs to be filled with something like that, something that positive. I guess that's the video. And thank you for watching. Subscribe, like the video, whatever. I have music. I make music. Check it out. I have an EP called Old Conversations by James Coe. It's out now. Thanks for watching.